The special meeting agenda for West Safka is now in order. And the first order of business is the agenda approval.
I would move for approval of the agenda as presented.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded that the agenda be approved. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Public comment on matters not on the agenda. We have no yellow tickets. Consent agenda is no items. Regular agenda, item number 3, the workshop of West Sacramento Flood Control Agency Biannual Administration and Operations Budget.
Good morning, Chair Denton and members of the board.
Morning.
We're pleased to be here to go through and do a workshop on the budget with the board. As you know, the city and Wasafka have worked together for many, many years. And on the wrong side of the room, the strategic plan for the city continues to have flood protection as its #1 priority. Obviously, it is this entity's #1 priority. And so we're going to go through and show you how the budget works and the monies that are going sort of back and forth between the agencies. So starting off, as you can see from the PowerPoint, there's 2 funds that are controlled by the city. It's a fund of 652, which is where we have our personnel costs, and our other O&M. Other O&M costs are things like training and staplers and coffee and various just items like that. And then the flood in lieu, which is Fund 229, which is used for capital projects pursuant to council direction. Next slide, please. Then this board, the Wasafka board, has 3 funds that basically it controls. It has Fund 870, which has the JPA's operating expenses, so that would be things like your attorney fees and audits and insurance and things like that. It has your debt service expenses, and then it has O&M, which I'll go through in a little bit more detail. The 870 is the equivalent for the Wasafka to the city's general fund. That's your general fund. And then this is where the city flood division reimburses for those costs that are not covered by a work order billing. So if the staff is working on something from a work order, that gets paid from the work order, and we'll go through that a little bit more detail. But if it's not covered, then it gets paid for out of 870. Then you have Fund 871. That's for your capital expenditures. Your work order capital expenditures, which includes the ICAP, which again, we'll go into a little bit more detail. And then you have Fund 257, and that's the grant reimbursement fund. So funds from 257 tend to go into 871 to pay for those capital expenditures. Funds from 871 will go into 870 to pay for some of the 870 costs, your general costs. And 870 is where the cost from 652, the city staff, that's where you pay that cost. Okay, next slide. So when you look at the 652, which is the city fund, the way this fund gets put together is the director of community development, Charlene Hamilton, and obviously Greg Fabian, the flood manager. They meet regularly, probably every 2 weeks, but as we get ready for the budget, they go and look and say, okay, do we have the right number of people in the right positions to get the work done that Wasafka needs done by city staff? And they review that, and then they look and see what will be the work order billing from approved CIPs. This is our projection of how much work order billing, and you can see 413,000 essentially is what we expect in both years from approved CIP projects. And then what are going to be the contributions from Wasafka to the operating fund? And we have that, the 440 and the 460. And then we have a tracking number 200 that we use to actually look at how much work people do. And at the end of each year, we true up. So if a Wasafka paid employee works on something else, they have some free time, and they have some expertise. So for example, in this situation, Mark Zolo has some expertise that the city's using for some city projects. And so he will bill to that, and he will track the time. and then we true that up at the end of the year. So if he spent 20% of his time on non-WSAFCA items, then 20% of his time gets paid back into the WSAFCA fund. Then there's the operation, and then you can see, looking at that, staying on that first personnel, that's salary and benefits. Currently, there's 6.87 FTEs that are assigned to WSAFCA, and the total budget is a little bit over $1 million. The middle is the operations budget. That's the supplies, the training, travel, and the total budget there is $21,000. So not a large amount of operations. And then the general support allocation that some people like to euphemistically call the third floor tax, but this is the general support allocation is the money that all departments pay, the city and WSAFCA pays for the services that are performed by the administrative department, basically running the payroll, HR, city manager, IT, things that we spread across to everyone who utilizes those services. Next slide. So looking at the 870, the sort of general fund for WSAFCA, you have first your O&M distribution, which is 15.52%. This is money that you pay to RD 900, you pay to 811 and 537. The total amounts there of 791 and 807 for their functions that they perform for WSAFCA. Then you have the other operations. So there's some direct operations and maintenance, 206,000, and then there's that's where the reimbursement comes for the city staff that is not working on work order billing. So if they're not working on a project, that's where this money comes from. And then you have the debt service, which are the 2011 and the 2015 bonds. Next slide. So looking at the bit of the detail on the city staff that works on WSAFCA, you have the flood protection planner, you have the flood protection manager, the engineering assistant, and the supervising civil engineer. Those are the four that do work order billing, that are working actually on projects and billing. You can see they have their salary and benefit and then their ICAP rate. The ICAP rate is a rate that has to be approved by the state of California, so we have to submit fairly massive amounts of paperwork to explain everything that we charge to that indirect cost, and there's their total rate. The positions underneath it, the analyst, the director, and the senior analyst that are the two senior analysts, you can see there's no rate there, and that's because we don't want to double dip and charge twice, because when those people who bill for projects, their billing includes the cost of those individuals. And so we want to make, so we don't put a rate in there because we have to see how many hours are actually billed by those people to determine if we get enough money from their billing to cover the percentages there's no additional cost. Next slide. So WSAFCA's 871 fund is, as I indicated, that's the professional services contract. So the contract with your attorney, with the auditors, with the various insurances, other things like that. Then you have your construction contracts and services, and then you got your work order and your ICAPs that come out of this particular fund. Last slide, and then be open to any questions. This is the capital projects for the next 2 years, and you can see we also give you a total budget, what's been expended through May 9, what's remaining, and then the capital projects, and you can see we've got 739. And let me back up for a second. These capital projects, again, your staff, your general manager, our flood manager, and the people in the flood program will bring these to the director, and then ultimately bring them to the finance division to put into the CIP program. And so you can see there's $739,000 for regional flood management and $132,000 for the I Street EIP construction. These are the WSAFCA capital projects that are paid for out of 871. So that is an overview of how we put together the budget and the various items and how it gets passed. I want to thank, obviously, Nitish Sharma, who's the city's budget manager. He does a lot of work working with Mark Zolo, who's your senior analyst, on a regular basis to make sure that the money is in the right funds going in and out and gets cleaned up at the end of the year. There is often true-ups that have to occur, but that is, so we're not recommending any changes to the staffing levels for WSAFCA. So there's the budget will not include any additional staff or reductions in staff. And you have the capital projects there. And be glad to answer any questions.
Well, I have a couple.
Sure.
Under the authorized positions that are funded for West Safka program, we have, and I understand what some of these are, but when we get down to senior analyst, I know we have one, and that's Mark, but who is the other one?
The other would be, I'm sorry, just blanking, Aaron Rivas, sorry, I'm looking at her face going, Aaron Rivas is the other.
And what does she do?
Go ahead, you want to give some details? Charlene Hamilton's the director, I'll let her answer that.
Okay.
It shuts off. Good morning, President Denton and directors. Aaron Rivas, we moved over to the WSAFCA with the departure of John Powderly. So there was a void when John Powderly left to go to the Corps, and he was a senior planner at the time he left. And so Aaron Rivas has assumed a lot of his functions plus some additional. She also provides support to Mark Zolo, given that we're starting one of the largest projects in history. So she does have the financial background and grant management experience and audit experience. And she also assumed all the responsibilities of the floodplain management, which was one of John Powderly's responsibilities. She is a certified floodplain manager, and so she is managing all that effort. And she also has some real estate experience, although not certified as Paul Dirksen, but she is working on that. We are sending her to training, and the city is paying for that, so that she can also provide support in the future, because at some point, I'm sure Mark Zolo and Paul Dirksen will want to retire and move on to disc golf or gardening or other things, and so Aaron Rivas is also part of the succession plan to ensure continuity for WSAFCA.
Well, it says below this, it says the costs associated with these positions are partially covered under the ICAP. These costs shall be reconciled at the end of each year and accounted for properly. Don't you think that we should have some kind of an idea as to what it's costing us under the benefit rate and that sort of thing, to be able to make a reasonable decision about funding and where our money's going?
Yes. And,
We can provide you.
and yes.
We can certainly provide you that information. We just didn't put it here because, again, the idea is we don't want to double. Sorry, the microphone goes off every time you move. Yeah, we can provide that information to you.
Okay. I think that we should have that every time we make one of these up.
Okay, that's fine.
So
And,
may I ask a clarifying question, Mr. Denton? Is that
Sure,
okay?
absolutely.
Yeah, so if you provided that information, it would be clear that it's actually part of ICAP, but it would just be for purposes of understanding the amounts.
We would just list the benefits in the ICAP rate, and then we would have an asterisk and a
Asterisk,
split.
okay.
Yeah, we would make it clear that we're not charging those
Right.
rates when it's included in the ICAP of one of the other people.
Okay,
But we can provide the rates, absolutely.
And the director, it would be the same thing.
Yes.
That information would be in there. And the administrative analyst one. Who is that?
Yep, that's Chelsea.
That's Chelsea. How's the kids, Chelsea? Good. Tom?
Yeah, I got a few questions. This ICAP still remains confusing to me, but we'll try to work through it. Phil, could you go back to the keep going. I think it was that. Go forward, right there. No, it's that 257,000 annual amount for overhead costs. Right, I guess your total budget proposed is 251 annually,
Correct.
your administrative amount. Explain to me how the ICAP costs computed doesn't cover these type of expenses that you're showing here. Because it seems to me that ICAP rate is all-inclusive and covers a lot of these processes. I could see some additional expense for some of our bond work that needs to be done and some managements on that, but this just seems like an overall overhead that should be covered. And you have here a proposed, you have an annual amount of 251,712. The last few years, it's been 357,000. So is there a reason why it's being adjusted now? So,
Sure, we make adjustments.
okay.
Do you want to take a shot at this?
One of the primary reasons the adjustment was made, as we presented to City Council yesterday, was we actually look at our process every year, and due to the approved rate by State of California, one of the things we discovered is some of the IT cost or costs related to workers' comp, we respread. So it actually benefited a number of special funds, like in this case, 652. So we went back and adjusted every year just to make sure we are charging everybody properly.
Let me give you a little more detail on that, for example, okay? So when we look at the budget, we're always trying to make it better. It's never perfect. And so you look at your workers' comp costs and you analyze them, and you look at your IT costs, and you realize, here's an IT cost that's being spread across multiple departments, and it really is a police department cost. So we're charging it now completely to the police department and taking it out of the costs to other funds. So many IT costs, as you can imagine, get spread, they benefit everybody, so we spread it to all the divisions. But some IT costs only benefit one division or one department. So we fine-tune that, and there were winners and losers. Obviously, for example, in that situation, the police department would be paying more because they're now paying for, let's just say it was body cameras or something hypothetical, right, that got charged across the board. Now we're charging that only to police because it's a police issue, and that reduces the the IT cost to other divisions, including this division. We did that on IT costs and workers' comp. We looked at the workers' comp and said the spread is not really, it's not accurate, and we respread the money differently, and that caused a reduction.
Okay, so those are the workers' comp costs and IT costs for those administrators, not for
No.
the employees.
So those are for the employees.
Well, but,
Those are the workers, that's part of what goes into the general support allocation, and is those costs.
okay,
Those don't go into the ICAP. Those are not part of the ICAP. ICAP doesn't include your IT costs, your workers' comp costs. IT costs, the ICAP costs are, you want to go through the list of those?
The ICAP is a number of things it includes. It includes the department's own overhead. In this case, it would be the director, administrative analyst, their cost. And also it includes some of the cost that is absorbed by Fund 652. So it does cover some of it, but not entirely. That's why at the bottom, you could see that part of the revenue is covered through work order billing, which is ICAP, and then part of it is contributions, because it doesn't cover everything. We also, a majority of the cost in general support, as you could see, is processing with SAFCA, payables, and grant management that's done. It's a huge task in this function.
Grant management.
We actually do all the accounting for it.
Yeah, but are those costs, are we able to bill those to projects?
If we track those, as we could see, program number 200 is available. And part of the, as I understand, with the process with DWR, there is a way, it's called General Support Administration, that they will allow some reimbursement. So this is basically a way set up in a way to get more cost reimbursements from DWR.
So when you go for a reimbursement to DWR, do you not present that through a rate that includes an ICAP?
Presented with the
Okay,
ICAP.
so, okay.
It's two
So
sides.
I'm, the double billing that we keep talking about, Phil, is what
There's no
keeps
double
coming up.
billing. You know, I will respectfully indicate that there is absolutely no double billing. We true everything up at the end of the year. If we get more money back from DWR and we've gotten money from WSAFCA, then the money gets put back. But our budget has to account for all the costs, and we don't know what we're going to be reimbursed for. And the payroll, the grant management, the IT, those things that are spread are not part of the ICAP. The ICAP includes all the department overhead, the office space that they have, the computers, it's all the other things that get associated with we do all of the positions, the number of positions we have, and the space, and the computers, all that stuff gets allocated and spread out to all departments based upon the number of people. So yours is based upon the 6.73.
Yeah,
Or
6.87.
6.87, and so that gets broken down, and every department has a piece of that general support allocation to pay for everybody who does that work. And then if we get reimbursed for any of that through DWR for administrative costs that they accept, then we true it up, and the money
Okay.
goes back.
And those funds go back into
870.
870 or 871?
870. 871 is capital,
Right.
essentially.
Right, which we're receiving, we're making submittals to the state for, as these projects go on. They're coming into that 257 or whatever fund that you said, and then those funds are moving from there to 871, right?
Correct.
As they become eligible.
As they become eligible. 870 income is our
Assessment.
assessment.
Correct.
And that's, you got a question?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
In the budget
Yes.
that was discussed on May the 24th at the city council meeting, I find nothing in here that shows where there's a transfer of money from your budget over to West Safka. Is there something in here that I'm missing?
Measure V is where the money went from, the 4.5 million.
Measure B.
Measure V.
Measure V is in Victor.
Yeah, Measure V is the 4.5 million that was transferred from the city Measure V fund to WSAFCA will be shown in the Measure V budget.
That's shown in here?
It was part of the
Well, it was
measure
2015.
K and V report that was presented to council yesterday.
Yeah, not the budget report. If you look at the Measure K, Measure V report, which would have been the item directly before the budget presentation, that staff reported on Measure K and V, which will also be published and on the website, will show exactly how the money was transferred out of Measure V to flood. 4.5 million.
And that's always shown in your budget?
Correct. Shown in the Measure V.
Measure V.
It was a separate
It's a
report
separate
last
report.
night. So there was the budget item, and then there was a Measure V update. So it's in that piece.
All of the measures are reported separately because they're, very specific. The council has given very clear direction that those monies were collected for certain reasons, and they want them reported separate from the budget so they can identify that we're spending the money as promised to the voters. And so Measure V is for flood and streetcar, so we report it separately.
Okay, I'll keep going. Well, let's go, you didn't show this up on the screen. This was part of the package.
Yeah.
Right.
That's basically our projected. I just have some questions on the projected amounts that are listed here. Are these estimates for this year through June 30th?
Correct.
Okay.
When we do the budget, obviously, we're not at the end of the year, so we have to do projections.
Okay, so if I follow that, like salaries are 663 estimated, and we're showing a almost 10% increase budgeted for next year. I mean, is that just not a, I don't think we've been without anyone this year that would have a, reduced budget for this year. I just wonder if that figure's accurate, or how you came up with the
Sure.
the large increase.
Yep, absolutely. So these salaries will include anybody who is entitled, not at the top of their range. We budget that they will give, the range is, there's a range from X to Y. We budget that they will get a 3% increase on average. Some may get 4, some may get 2, but
Okay.
if they're not at the top of the range, the biggest thing here that I'm sure you're aware of is that our PERS costs are going up substantially. So that's
I see that down there at under 5122.
Right.
It's a 10% increase.
So this would be the
at least.
salaries. That would just be movement in the ranges.
Yeah, okay. The 5950, the general administrative, that's what we were talking about here, that support charge that you have us.
Yes.
You have projected for this year of $249,600. We're owed a refund already. We're already above that. We've been charged however much a month.
Yeah, that's what we've been talking about, Board Member Ramos. When we get to when we fix something and we've charged more, we true it up.
Okay, so 29,792 is what we've been paying last year and then this year. So you have an estimated cost in the next 2 years of a reduced rate.
Correct.
But it appears that you're showing that there will be a true-up this year.
Yes,
That's exactly what
absolutely.
we're.
Okay? Is that the same for the professional services? The lobbyist costs, which, I think some of you are aware how they've been allocated, it's showing a projected amount of 50,000, and we've been transferring on a monthly basis significantly more than that. So we're $10,207 a month right now is what we've been paying to our federal and state lobbyist. So if that truly is a true-up or an estimate. I noticed, looking back at the last biannual budget, which would have been 14, whatever it was when we were going through this exercise 2 years ago, we had a projected amounts of 50,000, I believe, and obviously it's been significantly more than that the last 2 years. So hopefully we can take a look at that and see if an adjustment is necessary, and then how we distribute those costs between ourselves and the city in the next 2 years. I know we've already had discussions on those, so that would be worth taking a look at. So when I look at this sheet, obviously salaries. The rest of these items here, are these the things that make up, the sum of these things get put into the ICAP? Or is the ICAP something completely separate?
Salaries and benefits.
Yeah, the ICAP includes all of the salaries and benefits, so everything,
511 to 5133.
yep, all the way through, include all of these costs, when we charge out, they all get charged to the ICAP. So all the way through 5133. So-
5133,
Correct, all of those, that's the salary and benefits.
okay? Okay, but then there's some additional things that go into ICAP,
Correct.
some direct administrative costs, some
Overhead.
space
It's
costs.
yeah, it's essentially all the overhead.
desk
What
and
does it
yeah.
cost, what does it cost for that employee? What does it cost the city for that employee? You know, the space they're in, the computer they're
And
in.
is that 5,200, 5,200?
5290 and 5950.
Okay. Okay. It's just still somewhat of a mystery to me, but
We'll try to get we'll try to work on a chart, maybe. I think that's one of the things, I don't know about you, Board Member Ramos, but I tend to be visual, so we'll work on maybe a chart that'll visually show it, that maybe will be helpful. Sometimes that works better than the words, so we can grab John Robinson as our ultimate chart guy and see if we can come up with a chart that'll help explain the general support allocation and the ICAP and the wages and benefits and how they work.
That would be helpful, and how it works with other departments as well would kind of be, help us understand it a little better. I'd like to go back to what President Bill was talking about on the allocation of positions. And you mentioned Erin taking John Powerley's position, and I understand that, and, her support for Mark and other things directly to WSAFCA. I question the idea of floodplain management being funded through our 870 costs. We've had discussions over the last few years of, in lieu fee uses, other various things. I'm very protective of our 870 fund and the need to try to reserve as much monies as we can for its originally intended uses, which was levee construction. So the city is, the floodplain manager. They're the jurisdiction that does the discretionary decisions and works with the state to provide their floodplain management, FEMA and others. And I would question whether a more proper funding source might be the in lieu fee or something else. So you care to comment on that, Charlene?
Yes. So when flood protection came to community development, I went back in history. Most of it I had a lot from memory because I've lived here a very long time and was around when WSAFCA was formed. And so I went back, though, just to refresh my memory on everything, including the original 1994 agreement. And so when you look at the original 1994 agreement, which is still in place today, and really is the base of all WSAFCA, it talks about one of the main works includes water courses, drainage channels, conduits, ditches, canals, pumping plants, levees, buildings, and other structures utilized for the control and disposal of water within the boundaries of the agency or outside the boundaries or running adjacent to the boundaries of the agency. So I know that in 2007, there was, and there's been some other agreements since then, but they did not replace the 1994 agreement. So in 2007, there was the agreement that basically was an agreement between the three agencies expanding the need for more staff to support the flood program that was identified in 2007, which really kicked off significant levee planning work and construction. But that did not take away the responsibility of the agency to still work on controlling drainage within the levee area within the city and within each of your jurisdictions. And floodplain management is identified in this. It has been a responsibility of WSAFCA and everyone. Without the floodplain management and the ordinance and the enforcement, all the things that you have that exist for internal drainage and levee protection and flood protection could be at jeopardy. It's really that floodplain management ordinance and having someone who is specialized like John Powderly or Aaron Rivas to ensure that those are protected and that there are not encroachments. And so she works, as did John Powderly, with each of the agencies. Aaron is consistently checking in with Greg Fabian as she's working on updates to the ordinance to make sure that it stays fresh and that it is looking out for the city's interests in flood protection, RD 900's interests in flood protection, and RD 537, so that any development or any other types of infrastructure improvements don't harm or impede anyone's ability to protect the citizens and the properties in the event of a flood. And so that's my justification for floodplain management, floodplain ordinance, CRS, the community rating system, and the FEMA coordination. Another aspect of that is that the floodplain manager is kind of one of the key aspects that is building this relationship with FEMA right now. We're maintaining that. We've really strengthened that relationship over the last year, and we feel that that is helping to keep FEMA helping us to move forward with still allowing responsible development, which in turn increases your assessments and increases funding for WSAFCA. So without that relationship and without demonstrating that we are being proactive in our management of the floodplain areas and enforcement, then I think it heightens our risk for potential FEMA to get more focused on us and maybe revisit the potential for remapping sooner rather than later. And if that were to happen, it could definitely have an impact on WSAFCA's ability on future projects. So I hear what the board is saying about, your concerns about expenses with respect to staffing and operating. I will say that anybody who knows me, and I'm very much operate sort of quasi-public. I have a lot of private sector background, including reclamation and water resources and flood protection. So I like to run a very efficient group. And so I'm always looking ahead, seeing whether or not the staffing is right for whatever the board or wherever the program is taking us. But at the same time, if I'm seeing that there could be some idle time coming up, I'm always looking to where that skill set could be used, maybe in another billable way. And so Mark Zola was one example that we gave, Paul Dirksen too, as he has time in his real estate skill set. He may work on, the Parks and Open Space Master Plan, which is a billable project, and that then reimburses, puts money back into WSAFCA when they are doing some of those things. So I'm constantly trying to keep the costs down for WSAFCA, but keeping everybody busy as well. So I hope that answers your questions.
Well,
and I'm available at any time if you have questions or concerns on staffing and programming.
Okay, and I appreciate that. And your explanation of the need for, proactive floodplain management, I wholly agree with. Okay, and I think there's benefits that we all, and the coordination between the three agencies, if WSAFCA can play a role, that's great. But the floodplain ordinances and those things you're talking about, that goes to the city council. Not necessarily, we're not necessarily involved in that. We do have,
Actually, we were going to be bringing the update to the floodplain management ordinance to you first.
for comment? or-
Yes. And
Okay, that'd be great.
because we found in talking with the general manager, Kenrick, and also with Greg Fabian, that it appears in the past that it never did come to you. And because that is your enforcement, that is one of your enforcement ordinances, that's one of your quickest ways to move towards an enforcement action, would be to use that, the city's tool.
Right, and the individual reclamation districts could also use that tool directly. I mean,
Yes.
that's
But this
really where
one,
it
in
comes.
case the potential harm or the activity
To our projects.
crosses maybe multiple boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
say it's up there by the UP main line, and it kind of is something that overlaps in between RD 537 and RD 900. The floodplain management ordinance would allow us to move code enforcement, our city's code enforcement, in quickly, in concert with the RD's staff and efforts, and bring sort of a multi-pronged approach to getting whatever potential threat there might be under control quickly and effectively.
Well, then, let me offer this. I've read that 1994 and 2007, not recently, so a while back, makes sense at the time and probably still does in the most part. But also back then, when we put forth the funding for these projects, it was anticipated that the in lieu fee would be used for, assist in our processes. Since then, it's kind of evolved and changed. And I think maybe if it makes sense to keep the floodplain management activities, in the Wasafka shop, then, possibly some assistance in funding those peoples should be considered. I'm very protective of Fund 870, and it does have directives that it goes to levee construction, and that was the assessment. And I'm going to continue to be up here and continue to, make that point as we go forward, especially in light that as we have a federal project coming on, we're going to need to save every dollar and make it, if we do need to revise our assessment, that we can provide the public with the proper justification as to why it's needed and necessary. So, I've made that point before, and I'm making it again, and hopefully my fellow board members here concur with that, and perhaps we can, discuss, how maybe that could be implemented in the budget going forward. So.
Did you have anything you want to add on that?
Board Member Ramos?
We can hear you.
We will certainly convey that to the council. As you probably are aware, in lieu, we've had very little development and very little money going into any of our impact fees, including the in lieu fee. So there's not any significant amount of money that's actually available going into that fund. But we've heard you loud and clear, and we will continue to communicate that to the council, and the council will direct us on how to use the flood in lieu fee.
And I do notice that, it was, most of the monies that were there have been applied to, capital projects going forward, but there'll be, I think it's something to keep in mind. The last thing, and I want to thank Charlene for, all the work in keeping things organized. I think the move to that community development's been good for us as far as how we process. But just as we allocate things, the Director of Community Development is assigned to us at .37, basically a third of the time, and that occurred last year, a mid-budget correction from, to this year. Just curious as to what was the thought and the justification for it, and you're also saying that part of that time will be covered by the ICAP. Kind of goes back to Bill's question again as to how much, because I would think there'd be a sizable amount of that that time that should be covered under ICAP if it stays there. But I noticed that when the adjustment was made last year, of the various departments under community development, we had a large portion assigned to us where the others had none or very little. So
yeah.
So, community development, if I can adjust this without turning the thing off. The community development department comprises essentially five divisions. So flood protection is one division, and it has almost equivalent to 7 full-time employees. And then code enforcement is another division, and that has 5 employees in it, and that is funded out of the general fund. And then the remainder is the development services group, which is planning, building, and development engineering. My time is spread across all of those. And code enforcement, it's more primarily on by staffing. So essentially, with SAFECA, the staff that's contracted for with SAFECA, the flood protection division, constitutes 25% of my entire department. And so that's part of the percentage right off the bat. And then we shifted with the large project starting and also with the efforts at the federal level, looking ahead towards, New Start program, what do we need to do there? Greg and I actually have upped our meetings, and we meet weekly, and sometimes 2 to 3 times a week. So I'm also tracking my time to make sure. So that was the justification for a slight bit more increase. But again, when I'm tracking my time, that's not billing to anything. I'm really tracking my hours. I do want to make sure that, my time is being spread appropriately. So for development, the development group, 50% of my time is captured by that. And then code enforcement is only about 12.5% to 20%. So it has fluctuated based on demand when there's a large effort there. So I hear you. I will be watching that, and we will be looking at this annually. I'm not going to wait for a 2-year budget to make an adjustment. If there's some increase in the development world or in the code enforcement world where I'm foreseeing that I'm going to be spending more time there, it is a matter of a change form, and I send it to finance, and they make the adjustment like within 1 day and adjust the percentage. So currently the percentage is there and is very focused on the Southport Levee project and making sure that it goes smoothly and that the staff have all the resources that they need. So I hope that helps explain that percentage.
It does, and is there opportunities when you're meeting directly with Greg or other folks on our projects that we're able to bill your time as well to the projects or?
Yeah, I can't really bill. That's the thing with directors. We don't necessarily bill.
Well, I don't want to change your title, but.
I'm not sure you really want me to bill.
Yeah.
Because if I were to become billable in that form, then the ICAP kicks in with, on top of my rate. Right now, what you're getting is my direct cost, and then in that 37. So you're getting the direct cost without anybody else's overhead on top of me. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then where the staff are billing to projects, to the 871 projects, and some of the overhead is built into their billable time, that's what they're talking about, tracking And then they're watching that, and then what they'll do at the end of the fiscal year, they go back and they look and they say, okay, how much ICAP came in, and then how much time was the director, the senior analyst, and the admin analyst percentages over here billed, and then there's that true up to make sure.
That's that true up on the
Yes.
general overhead and maintenance.
And that not only not happens for WSAFCA, that happens with all my divisions and departments.
Okay.
This happens in, the development group, code enforcement, it happens in public works. So it's a standard procedure ever since the ICAP was put in place, which actually came about through Caltrans, through a lot of our federal projects and things through Caltrans. This is something that Caltrans recognizes and.
And that true up obviously occurs after the end of the fiscal year. And then at what point is there a transfer one way or the other? And does it?
It usually happens within 3 months, right,
We
Nitesh?
we have to have it done within 3 months.
Yeah.
It usually takes us a couple months.
Okay.
And by the way, Board Member Ramos, you are not the only one confused by the ICAP. We get this question from many managers and department heads when we go through the process and council. So it is probably the person we really should bring down here is Claire Connor, but she'll give you it in so much detail that your head will spin, because she's the one who has to work with Caltrans. And to get the ICAP approved, it's maybe 4 or 5 communications back and forth from us to them, and sometimes they tell us, you're missing stuff, you need to add this in, and they actually, our rate goes up because there's stuff that they want to see in it. They want to see, they're trying to make sure that the ICAP, what the indirect costs that people are charging to their projects is the same thing, whether it's West Sacramento, or any other city or any other entity. So, it is very complicated. We literally spend a significant amount of Claire's time, aside from managing all of our grants, is spent managing the ICAP every year. You have to get it approved every year. It goes
Okay,
up,
no,
it goes
no,
down.
I understand that. It fluctuates, depending on the deal. But we have a significant amount of our payroll is being assigned to projects.
Correct.
And is part of that reimbursement. So there is a lot of ICAP reimbursements coming. So
Absolutely.
I don't know, it'd be interesting to see how that, when the true-up does occur, I wouldn't mind being briefed on it so I understand it better.
That would be more, we should come back to this board, not only for the final budget approval, but also like we do with the council, we should come back when we have the year-end numbers all done with, here's how we ended up. That's what we do with the council. We have, here's how we think we're going to end up. We do our budget, and then we come back and go, here's how we actually ended up.
Okay.
It's never, the auditors come in, they make you move money from one place to another for an accounting reason, and so we come back and sort of say, okay, we thought we were going to be here, we were 20,000 off, and here's where it was.
Yeah, I've read those end-of-the-year reports.
Yes, exactly.
But I think actual presentation to us would be good, too.
That would be fine.
Yeah.
More than glad to do it.
Okay. Thank you. I think I'm done. Go ahead.
I found the presentation really helpful, and so I wanted to know if it would be possible for us to get a copy of this PowerPoint, or maybe the next iteration. It sounds like there may be some clarification with some questions that were asked, but I just thought the array and the kind of going through the city's piece and the WSAFCA piece was really helpful. So if it's possible for us to get a copy of the PowerPoint, that'd be great.
Absolutely. We'll take a look at it. I have to give Mr. Sharma credit. He did this at 12 o'clock last night after the council
job.
meeting. So we will review it one more time to see if there's any typos we didn't catch, and see if there's any clarifying, comments we can make to make it easier. Maybe we'll look to see if there's a chart, but I may not be able to create that quickly. We'll get that to you within the next week,
That'd be great.
if not before, but let us look at it and see if we can make it more helpful.
Okay.
One last question.
Yes, absolutely.
On item 5269, 5269, official fees. Can you give me kind of just a brief outline of what that refers to?
Tish knows the numbers by heart.
Yeah, those are actually payments to the board members for attending the meetings.
Okay. All right, any more questions?
No, I'm good. I'm good for now.
Thank
Well, if there's no
you.
more questions, I thank you very much, and it's very informative. Too bad we don't do this more often.
I think we will try to make sure we do it. I think that was, one of the messages we got was to not just present a budget, but to do a workshop and make sure that we can answer questions. And it'll help us provide you with a budget document that maybe is a bit more understandable, which is what our goal obviously is.
One last item, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to add this. The process you go through on the various measures that affect us, do we get a copy of that attachment to your budget?
I don't know if you do, but we certainly can. There's no reason. It's a public document. So you're talking particularly about Measure V?
Yeah, primarily.
Sure,
yes.
absolutely. We can, when we provide you with the full budget in June, for your June meeting, we can include the Measure V. Yeah, it'll be, well, but we'll provide a copy. We'll provide a copy, attach it as an attachment to the budget.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
How are you gonna handle your defect in your budget, $208,000? Just a curiosity, that's all. This is
I think he's referring to last night's city council
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah,
Oh,
Are you talking about the overall city budget?
yeah, Public Works Engineering is projected a fiscal year of 16-17, or a defect of $208,002.
So last night, we explained to the council that the public works deficit was caused by some unanticipated retirements and people leaving, and we have some one-time money in our, what we call our one-time money fund, and we'll use that to balance the budget.
I just wondered how you was gonna do it. That's all. Thank you very much. Anything else?
Well, we got, I don't know if there's anything under 4. Is West F
Oh,
project?
West F, public project updates.
Good morning, President Denton and members of the board. I really just wanted to talk about, well, I was going to talk about two things, but I understand from talking to Mark Zola that he already told you about the receipt of the $22 million last week, so that was one of the items. The other one was, I've communicated with the board that the Army Corps of Engineer in looking at their fiscal year 17 work plan, they made some adjustments, and that work plan came out last night. I took a look at it this morning, and disappointedly saw that the WESAC project was not listed for fiscal year 17 pre-construction engineering and design. But that kind of goes counter to what we were led to believe by the Corps, and I've brought this to the attention of our federal lobbyists. They've contacted Matsui's office, and she is spending some time with the Corps to let them know how she feels about that. The other choice words were used, but so more to come. I was hoping to have some good news about that this morning, but a little disappointed at about 7:30 this morning when I saw that. So hopefully I'll have better news next time. And that was the only update.
18 could be even a harder lift, so let's see.
Yeah, and what we'd really look for in 18 is not to be under continuing resolution, not to have this drag on, halfway through the fiscal year, and if a budget is passed timely, for all practical purposes, we could be, going into PED about the same time as if we had received the fiscal year 17 adjustment, but we'll see how it goes. And keep our fingers crossed and do what we can to make things happen sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.